Assalamu alaikum. Welcome all to the presentation of the Global Innovation Index 2012. It's a co-publication of INSEAD and of the United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization, who has been a great partner in this endeavor. We are also very fortunate to have outstanding knowledge partners for the GII, the Global Innovation Index. And these are Booz & Company, Alcatel-Lucent, and the Confederation of Indian Industry. We will hear today from Daniela Benavente, who is the lead researcher on the Global Innovation Index, and we will hear from one of our knowledge partners, from Dr. Karim Sabag, who is with Booz & Company. It's a great pride for INSEAD to host this presentation and the Global Innovation Index, because innovation is so central to everything we do at INSEAD and certainly at INSEAD Abu Dhabi as well. Just to give a couple of examples, we have a lot of people at INSEAD who think and do innovation. Here, based in Abu Dhabi, we have Professor Hal Gregersen, who's been based in Abu Dhabi for the past 3 years. And he has just published his book called The Innovator's DNA, a global best-selling book on innovation, going through what is it that makes such companies as Amazon, Apple, Google, Skype, Virgin so successful as innovators. We also practice innovation in many different ways. As another example of how being in Abu Dhabi has shaped what we do in terms of our practice and our innovation, Professor Phil Parker has had a project which you may have just recently read about in the National, which has been a project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a very large grant, developing technology to provide information to farmers in developing countries through mobile phones to increase the knowledge and the quality of life of potentially millions of people throughout the world, taking advantage of development of modern technology, sort of very highly developed technology, to reach into the places where knowledge is most needed. Innovation is also central to what we do in the core of our business, our teaching. We made extensive use, for instance, for a long time of telepresence to integrate the campuses. France and Singapore and Abu Dhabi are fully integrated as research and teaching campuses, thanks to the innovative use of information technology and video linking and telepresence. We've also innovated in executive education, where INSEAD essentially defined the field globally on executive education starting several decades ago. And we continue to innovate, for instance, in our executive MBA. We're about to start to enroll our third executive MBA class in Abu Dhabi. And we've already graduated one very successful and very distinguished class. And again, making use of the global nature of the institution to have a class that benefits both from the integration with the region's economy and also from the global leverage of the school. Our executive MBA intake here is admitted by the same standards and the same staff as the other executive MBA classes, and eventually all the classes merge to take the more specialized elective classes, be they in marketing, finance, or whatever subject is of interest to the students. So again, being in Abu Dhabi has been a great benefit for us. We're very excited about the project, a lot of exciting things happening, and this presentation of the Global Innovation Index in Abu Dhabi is another example of that, of how being in Abu Dhabi is very much central to our mission and has been very exciting for us. So I will next introduce Daniela, who is, as I mentioned, the leading researcher and project manager for the Global Innovation Index. Daniela has a very distinguished curriculum, a very impressive curriculum. She did her bachelor's in economics in Chile, and then she has not only one but two master's degrees, one from Columbia University in New York and one from Sciences Po in Paris, and she has a PhD as well in international economics from the Graduate Institute. And in the meantime, she's also found time to be an economic advisor to the President of Chile. So both a great depth of academic theoretical experience and also practical policy experience. So without further ado, Daniela.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very honored to be here today. Oops, sorry. Oh, okay. So I'm here this morning to talk about the GII, what it represents, how it was made, the people behind the GII, and what we understand as innovation and how MENA is doing in that context, the Middle East and Northern Africa. So the GII, you must know, it's a collaborative effort. We have two publishers. INSEAD is one, and as of this year, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations, joined as co-publisher. We work with 3 knowledge partners, Alcatel-Lucent, Lucent Company, and the Confederation of Indian Industry. We have an advisory board of 11 experts from various international organizations such as UNESCO and ITU and other sectors such as the Internet Society and so on. And we are very privileged to work with jointly with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, okay, which performs a statistical audit of the rankings to make sure that rankings are reliable. We also work with them on the methodology. So the Global Innovation Index has a global coverage. We covered this year 141 economies. Sorry, yeah. 16 more than last year. We added 60 countries this year. The index covers 84 indicators. We make a big effort to include as much hard data as possible. 62 indicators this year had data, and 16 other composite indicators with very narrow focus from from international organizations. We make a great effort at trying to capturing innovation in emerging markets through the proper scaling of indicators. For example, patents is scaled by GDP and not by population. So we use the number of patents that are generated for every billion of GDP in each economy. We use indicators of knowledge diffusion, which are traditional indicators of innovation, such as high-tech exports, royalty receipts, communication exports, FDI outflows, but also indicators of knowledge absorption, high-tech imports, royalty payments, communication and overall services imports, and FDI inflows. That's one example of 2 sub-pillars that are designed in such a way that emerging markets that are good at adopting knowledge created elsewhere are recognized as such in the rankings. This year, for the very first time, we include the strengths and weaknesses of each economy in the country profiles. We also use a very transparent methodology that is clearly detailed in the different annexes and appendices of the report. And the framework is adjusted every year for relevance and timeliness. I'm very proud to say that more than 91% of the data we're using this year dates from 2009 or later. So, for example, we're already capturing some of the developments during the global crisis. this year we had very good collaborations with a series of organizations to get very relevant and new data. For example, from Google, we have the number of video uploads on YouTube. This is a data series that they had never shared before, and that was shared with us under confidentiality. There is an annex that was created this year to clearly explain year-on-year comparability of results, because you must know that just by adding 16 countries this year, that creates a sort of distortion in the comparison of rankings from year to year, but also the adjustments to the framework could not, the changes in rankings due to adjustments to the framework should not be attributed to worsening or improving performance. So we have a full annex on that with details on the 3 sources of changes in rankings for each economy. This is also something that had not been done in the past and that is usually not done by other composite indicators. So now I'll get into the details of the model. We use a very broad definition of innovation as the implementation of new products, goods and services, processes, business models, organizational models. We do not restrict the definition of innovation to inventions, for example, or to R&D. So it's really not restricted to technological innovation either. We think we're going with our times in which innovation can really apply to any sector in society, governments, firms, and academic sectors. The GII is built around 7 pillars. 5 of those pillars are considered input pillars that reflect the overall conditions of economies to innovate. The first one is institutions, then human capital and research, infrastructure, market sophistication, and business sophistication. Those constitute what we call the innovation input subindex. And then we have 2 output pillars, knowledge and technology outputs, and creative outputs, which constitute the innovation output subindex. The average of the 2 subindices gives the overall ranking in the global innovation index. But we also compute what we call the innovation efficiency index, which is the ratio of the output subindex and the input subindex, and which gives an insight on those countries that are really doing much more than what would be expected on the basis of their input conditions. So now I will reveal the top 10. Here you have the top 10 in the input and output subindex. You can see those on the screen. The top 10 are Switzerland, Sweden, Singapore, Finland, the UK, the Netherlands, Denmark, Hong Kong, Ireland, and USA. I can add that the top 3 are exactly the same as last year, Switzerland, Sweden, and Singapore, and that those top 3 positions are actually very robust. And I can also say that 9 of these economies were already in the top 10 last year. Canada dropped out, down to position number 12, and we have Ireland in position 9 this year, but all the other economies were already in the top 10 last year. So how is the Middle East and Northern Africa doing in these rankings? You have here the details for exactly the same 4 core indices of the report. Qatar is at position 33, leading in the region, followed by the United Arab Emirates. Then in position 37, then Bahrain in position 41, Oman in 47, Saudi Arabia in 48, Kuwait in 55. So you see that the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council economies are leading the rankings in the MENA region. And then we have Jordan and Tunisia, which you'll see later are positioned as what we call innovation learners, very clearly performing very well in the region, followed by then Lebanon, Morocco, Egypt, Iran, Algeria, Syria, and Yemen. In the report itself, we highlight 8 key results. I will go very quickly over them because actually when you read the report you will get in depth into those. But one very key aspect is that there is clearly an innovation divide. We saw the stability at the top 3, the stability at the top 10, and actually the stability is right all the way up to the top 30. And you see in this chart that scores of high-income countries are usually well above the scores of upper and low, middle and low-income countries. So there is a divide, an income divide, but there is a divide as well by region. So Northern America includes only the US and Canada in the groupings that we have, and is the leader as a region, followed closely by Europe, that includes quite a few more countries. Then Southeast Asia and Oceania, Northern Africa and Western Asia comes in 4th position. Latin America and the Caribbean, Central and Southern Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, finally. And this year we included a column with the European Union because it's the very first year that we covered that region entirely. So we do have these income and regional divides, but this year we made sure to control for GDP per capita in the presentation of the results. Because of course in the ranking we would expect to have high income countries at the top. But if you plot the GII scores by GDP per capita, you actually get very interesting results. This is a key chart in the report on page 24, but I give you exactly the same chart with details of the economies. And there, so going back to the Middle East and Northern Africa region, you see that Qatar, the UAE are right here, maybe, are below what we call the trend line. These are wealthy economies that should probably be positioned upper positions in the ranking. So they're still doing very well in the top 40, but they are in the bubble that we see at the bottom of the slide. Same for Brunei, Kuwait, less so for Bahrain, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, which are doing a bit better compared to the GDP per capita. In the region, we have Jordan, very well positioned at the top, and Tunisia. Otherwise, the leaders are essentially, as I said, high-income countries, but in other parts of the world, China, India, Vietnam, Moldova, Latvia, Malaysia are doing very well. This is the results by economies of the previous chart that we saw. So the countries at the top are those that are positioned 10% or more above the trend line, the global trend line. Those are the economies that we really highlight in the report as those who have the stronger innovation capabilities and innovation results. The majority of countries in gray here are actually at the level that would be expected from the stages in development. And the countries at the bottom are those that would probably be expected to do more. We see this year, and we already noticed last year, that upper middle income countries are usually quite a few of those big economies, and particularly Latin America, the region I know best, upper middle income countries are doing less well than lower middle income countries, and that might be a question of some inertia in institutions and infrastructure and in all the business sophistication and market regulations that might maybe prevent these economies to frog leap in innovation. And on the contrary, lower middle income countries are usually better positioned. And at the bottom, we see as well usually resource-rich economies. The Gulf Cooperation Council economies is one example. But we also have there countries like Venezuela, Botswana, Gabon, Algeria, all economies that are very resource-rich, and that maybe there is some crowding out of investments in innovation in these economies, and there is also an effect in the rankings through the proper scaling I was talking about by GDP that makes that this economy is not highly ranked. So one key issue that we highlight in the report is that it is very important in times of crisis not to stop the investments in R&D. This slide should have been placed before. Here I included the Middle East and North America region, and Northern Africa regions in a special slide. So you have the global trend line, and you see here clearly Jordan, Tunisia, and Morocco amongst the learners. You see the regression line for GCC countries well below what would be expected, and other and the other economies in the region as well doing less well than expected, but slightly better. Another key result that we highlight, the report this year was titled Stronger Innovation Linkages for Global Growth, and we have 10 analytical chapters that go in depth into this overall theme. And I'm very glad to say that we have one on GCC, on the GCC region, that was contributed by Booz & Company. And there is one case study of Saudi Arabia. These are the average scores in the 7 pillars for the Middle East and Northern Africa region. You see, no, for GCC countries, sorry. You will probably get a copy of this presentation and get into more detail into this, but here I give a what I could highlight is that Qatar is doing very well in business sophistication. Qatar and the UAE very good, doing very well on creative outputs. And in general, the major weakness in the region is in knowledge and technology outputs, where we have, for example, patenting. We also highlight in the report that there is a multi-speed Europe. So these phenomena that we see in the MENA region appears in other regions as well. We also highlight that with the differences that we can find among innovation leaders, with the special box on the United States, we also have some details on the BRICS economies. These are all the type of analysis that we can do for the region upon request. So I'm presenting these results because these were presented yesterday in Geneva. For example, for the BRIC economies, we have here the performance in the 7 pillars, just like I presented for the MENA region. But we also have these highlighted, the 7 out of the 21 sub-pillars that we have, the 7 sub-pillars where scores are more similar among these countries, and those in which they're really dissimilar. so that we can see which are the relative strengths and weaknesses of different economies. That's the richness of the report and of the database behind the report. So this is my final slide, just to highlight that that measuring innovation is really, really challenging. It's a moving target. I have here the country profile of Switzerland, but we have country profiles for every economy, every one of the 141 economies. The little dots in red are the strength of different economies, and the hollow dots are the weaknesses. And later, maybe when we get questions, I can get into more depth into some of these country profiles for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Karim Sabah. Dr. Karim Sabah is a senior partner with Booz & Company, which would be impressive by itself, but he also has a much further distinguished curriculum. He holds a bachelor's degree and MBA from American University in Beirut. He's also taken a PhD. He is chairman of the Ideation Center at Booz & Company, which is their think tank for the Middle East, so another form of innovation, producing ideas for the region. He is also a visiting professor at the formerly called École des Ponts et Chaussées, or now known as Paris Tech. And he's also a member of the World Economics Forum Regional Agenda for the Middle East and North Africa. So great depth of experience in the region. So thank you, Dr. Karim Sabah.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. First of all, it's a privilege for Booz & Company to be associated with INSEAD, the World Intellectual Property Organization, Alcatel-Lucent, and the Confederation of Indian Industry in this very important study. As underscored by Daniela, innovation is not a trivial topic. It's going to be one of the central discussions that policymakers, business leaders will have in the context of how do you go beyond the austerity measures that exist today and sort of truly create an engine of growth, social and economic growth. And so do not view this, and I invite the media really to underscore that point, do not view this just as an index where we rank nation, view this as a vehicle where we are providing societies and economies with a tool to jumpstart economic growth and social development. And it's important to underscore the point that this is not about research and development only. This is about social innovation, economic innovation, product and services, research, technology. So innovation across all facets of life as we go through it as individuals. Now, Daniela spent a lot of time outlining the methodology, and we had agreed at the outset that she will sort of present to you how this methodology was put together over the years. And then I will spend more time regarding the results in the context of our region. Now, where do we stand? And I would like to focus on the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation countries, starting with rank number 3 in Qatar, moving up to 37, 41, 47, 48, and last but not least, 55 in the case of Saudi Arabia. So, grosso modo, the GCC countries are ranking between the position 33 and 55, which in my view is quite an honorable result. Bear in mind that many of the social and economic reforms that we take for granted today have actually been enacted over the past decade. INSEAD did not exist 10 years ago in this building. Many of the media companies that you represent may not have been in the shape or in the structure they are, where telecom was a monopolized industry. Infrastructure was quite limited. The airports that we have today, the roads, the highways that we consider as a basic right, were not here 10 years ago. And so we have to view this as an evolution as opposed to a finite point in time. And so when you look at the results, they're quite good. Now, Daniela underscored a very important point that you will see over here, which is that the ranking on the input, مداخلات الابتكار, are much higher than the rankings on the outputs. And the reason for that, again, is that this is a generational investment. It's going to take 2 decades for the inputs to actually pay rents and translate into outputs. Now, you can accelerate that, but I hope Daniela will not disagree with me that it's not going to happen overnight. When you put the input, immediately the secret sauce is going to produce outputs and innovation. It's going to take a generation to get there. But we are certainly getting there, and I will move to these results. The other observation I would like to make is that innovation is not a monopoly for a region or a country or a company or an industry or an individual. Innovation is within the reach of every society and every economy. And if there is one sort of key insight I take is, out of the top 10 nations on the innovation index, 7 of these nations are in fact small nations, nations with populations ranging between 4 million and 9 million. So scale is maybe a good enhancer, but it's not an enabler. So innovation is perfectly within the reach of any nation and any region, certainly within the reach of our part of the world. So bear in mind that we have a divide between the results of the inputs and the outputs, simply because we started on this journey in our part of the world in GCC only a decade or so ago. Now, what I would like to do is discuss briefly 3 countries, in no particular order: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. And I'll leave the UAE until the end. And Daniela actually has prepared the detailed results for each one of these. So at any given point in time, if you, representative of the media, would like to have more insights, we'll pull the chart and then Daniela can walk us through it. Now, the observation in the case of Saudi Arabia is quite interesting, because when you look at the results, 4 out of the 5 top input indicators, so whether it's institution, human capital infrastructure, market sophistication, and business solutions, 4 out of these results, so you look at the blue bar at the top, 35, 40, are in the top 40. Said differently, Saudi Arabia, along most of the inputs on innovation, so what makes innovation possible in the future, is ranking in the top 40. Bear in mind that Saudi Arabia's overall ranking is 48. So there are things that are working favorably for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, there are some hurdles. The hurdles are in the form of the institutions, and there are certainly lags when it comes to the outputs. So when you actually look at the outputs, the results are still far behind. Saudi Arabia ranks 115 among the surveyed nations in terms of output, particularly in the area of knowledge and technology. Having said that, on the creative outputs, anything that deals with things like creating digital product and services, creating digital models or web-enabled models, creating digital services that can be exported and what have you, the scores tend to improve. Case in point is that the ranking on creative output comes in position 36, and again, is because countries like Saudi, like the UAE, like Qatar have made significant investment in information and communication technology and making sure that digitization becomes part of the national agenda. If we move to Qatar, we will see a very comparable picture, albeit with more positive results. So in the case of Qatar, 3 out of the top 5 input indicators, specifically human capital, infrastructure, and business sophistication, actually rank in the top 25. Remember, their ranking overall is 33. But there are things that they're doing very, very well, and sort of they really push the index on. And this, for example, is a reflection of the economic reform, the educational reforms that they've introduced at the level of primary schools, high schools, and universities. Ditto for infrastructure. Ditto for business sophistications by raising the bar on the quality of the business delivery, registrations, legal frameworks, and what have you. Now, when we go to the result, we'll see the same pattern that we have seen in the case of Saudi, which is that when it comes to knowledge and technology output, they rank 68 globally, but on the creative output, again enabled by the national ICT agenda, they rank 17 globally. Again, a very honorable result for the state of Qatar. And last but not least, coming to the UAE, the input results get even better. In the case of the UAE, 3 out of the 5 input pillars actually rank in the top 20. The human capital, the infrastructure, and the business sophistication. Top 20 globally. So we have to visualize how far the UAE has progressed on many of these fronts. Now, these are the inputs. So this is what goes into the machine that will make innovation possible. Now, it hasn't produced innovation, but it's the start of the process. And I'm sure we all appreciate that we're very anxious to look at the results, sort of where do we get the innovation. The positive story is that on creative output, the result is 18, i.e. the UAE ranks 18th in the world when it comes to creative output, again enabled by the national digitalization agenda. But at the same time, when it comes to the knowledge and technology output, the ranking is closer to position 100 in the world. So there are things that are working very favorably and things that are still lagging behind and will need some form of acceleration. So overall, very positive results. We deliberately picked 3 very different countries in terms of social and economic construct, but they are within the region, and it gives you a sense that these results are not an accident. These countries are moving in sync with their social and economic development agenda. Having said that, the way forward, and if I was a magician and there were 4 things we can make happen, is sort of address 4 challenges. The first one is that these countries and the broader MENA region can benefit from having sectorial plan where innovation is clearly defined as a central element of the agenda. When I talk about sectorial plan, it's saying, look, these are the economic sectors that are important to us. And these are the innovation initiatives that we're going to prioritize over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, bear in mind that a lot of the reforms that we take for granted started only 10 years ago, so it is work in progress, but it may be worth accelerating the work on that front. 2 is address the challenge that we face today that resources invested against innovation are still limited, whether these are financial resources, whether they are human capital resources, or whatever other form of resources. So this is still done more as an ad hoc initiative and much less as an orchestrated effort. Whereas if we go to the top 10, we will see that when they started that journey, there was a better orchestration of innovation type of efforts. The third one has to deal with overcoming some of the hurdles that exist in the environment. So even if we go to the most basic definition or the most traditional definition of innovation, research and development, if we don't have the proper legal framework, if we don't have the proper funding framework, go-to-market framework, a lot of the ideas at level of research and development that cannot be patented, copyrighted, and then translated into an actual execution on the ground. If we don't have the process to take care of that, then innovation is not going to happen. And last but not least is that there has to be better clarity about the institutional model, i.e. what institutions are setting the goals, what institutions are actually pursuing these innovations, and who's actually measuring the results of all of these efforts. So overall, and this will be my concluding page, there are 3 things that needs to happen in each and every GCC country and the broader MENA region. One is there has to be clarity on what the innovation strategy is and is not. Now, this cannot be an open-ended discussion. Strategy is about choices of things you will not do. It's not about all the things you will do. So there's going to be probably 3, 4, 5 economic sectors where innovation may be prioritized. And in this discussion, they're going to say, well, these are the business areas that are important to us. These are the innovation types that we're going to see. And this is the role that the enterprise, the corporations and the smaller institutions will play. The second area has to do with the innovation driver. So what human capital will be provided, what financial resources will be provided, or any other type of financial, or what R&D facilities or physical capital will be provided. And last but not least has to do with the innovation environment. So whether it's regulation, tandeem with tashri'at, anything that needs with orchestrating the effort so that we don't duplicate. And last but not least is about all the operational support that can be provided. So let me conclude on my 3 messages. One is that innovation is not the monopoly of any region, country, company, or individual. I think it is within the reach of everyone, and we're very clear on that. And if anything, the top 10 countries demonstrate to us that even small nations can be at the forefront of this. And my last message is that we've come a long way. 10 years ago, everything that we take for granted most of the things we take for granted did not exist today. So it's going to be a generation investment. We're probably halfway through that generation investment. And hopefully in the coming years, the result will show that the gap between inputs and output will narrow, and therefore the efficiency of innovation, i.e. what we invest and what we get in return, will be proportional. So thank you for listening.
We can take some questions if anyone is interested in asking questions from either Dr. Karim or Dr. Daniela. Joe will pass on the microphone.
Hi, my name is Sonia from Off News. I have a question regarding the input and output. So basically, when the input and the output match, what does that mean? Or when there is a huge gap, what does that mean? If you can put it in simple terms.
Yes, the efficiency index is precisely measuring that. We would expect efficiency index to revolve around 1, to input be matched by outputs, and actually it ranges between 0.5 to 1.2. So there is the expectation that the efficiency index is not at all correlated with income or with any indicator. In fact, we have in the top 10, we have high-income countries, low-income countries, lower-middle-income countries. China and India take the first 2 spots in the efficiency index because we have Sri Lanka in position 10, for example. So that's precisely what the efficiency index is trying to compute. Now, that said, we might have efficient economies because they have particularly low levels of inputs. But usually, we see a very high correlation between efficiency and the global innovation index, and that's one of the scatter plots in the report.
Any other questions? Any other question? Mark?
I'm not sure who this should be addressed to. I was just wondering, with the GII itself, it's the richer countries that rate higher up, but when it comes to the innovation efficiency, we see a lot of the less wealthy countries. We see Jordan rating very well, even Egypt, Lebanon. I wonder what benefits they had, why they rated better than other countries.
Well, there's no clear pattern actually, but you have to get really into the details of every country economic profile to see where the leverage comes. But that information is clearly in the report. Here I have the I don't know if you get to see. So these are the 2 output pillars, and all the rest are input pillars. And we see here quite a few weaknesses for the UAE in what we call knowledge and technology outputs. These include patents at the national office, at the Patent Cooperation Treaty. We have scientific publications here. This is a weakness in the UAE, for example. Computer software spending, and all the 4 knowledge diffusion indicators I mentioned in my presentation. So really, by looking at the country profile of each economy, we get a sense of what is it that is really not working that well. Now, in creative outputs, we have a strength here for the UAE, And these are trademarks at the national office and the Madrid agreement, where we have non-available data in the UAE. And the leverage here comes from a survey question which we took from the World Economic Forum survey on the use of ICT in organization and model creation. So depending on each profile, that's how you get that information. But on efficiency, it's really this compared to the rest.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a qualitative, and I'm under the control of Daniela. The observation is, in the case of Jordan and Lebanon, these were societies and economies that were more open from an economic standpoint in the previous 2 decades. So they started on this trajectory much earlier than the GCC countries. And so you have a better rooted entrepreneurial culture in these economies and societies. So it's very natural for them to have more initiatives coming versus the inputs. So the outputs already were there. The small and medium enterprises, the individuals, some of the large companies that already exist. In the GCC, that journey started a decade or so ago, as I underscored earlier in my presentation. And so you still have that lag, but it is catching up. So entrepreneurship is a central topic that policymakers talk about. INSEAD has this as a central topic in many of the courses and or the seminars. So we're going to get in there. But the need of moving the needle on innovation came in earlier in these countries, and so it's natural for them to come across as being more efficient. But for me, this is only a temporary result. Maybe Daniela, you can observe, you can provide your view as to how long does it take for a country to bridge the gap between inputs and outputs.
That I'm afraid I wouldn't know, and it really depends on the different economies. But what we have in the report, we say that there is some sort of, we could think of an innovation transition model. It really starts by getting some input rights in your economy, and then you can take off. But what we see is that very often you have pockets of excellence and clusters that start developing within economies. That phenomenon is in all the top 10, but also in countries like India and China. And those pockets of excellence that develop around some particular sectors sort of pull the rest of the economy. You have greater wealth at that level, higher skilled population, and there is some sort of multiplier effect, and this is services effect of innovation that I highlighted in the report plays as well, to sort of pull the rest of the economy into that path of innovation. That when you see the chart that I had with GDP, the curve is really steep.
Based on the pillars and the results?
I would say definitely yes. And probably next year, this is just an announcement, we'll get much more into the details of the time series. This year we did it only for the US, Switzerland, and Sweden. But we do have the richness of the database, as I said, and we do different analytical reports in specific countries over the year. And yes, definitely we can, by looking at the profile, we can see from the strength are defined for each economy as those in which a higher percentage of economies are below that particular economy. So you can see right away where the leverage becomes for each of these 141 economies in the future.
So if there are no more questions, I'll just make a few final remarks. First, thank again. Okay. All right. So to thank again our speakers, Dr. Daniela and Dr. Karim. And again, we're very proud to host the presentation of the Global Innovation Index here in Abu Dhabi. The UAE is certainly in a very exciting journey in this respect, and to echo a little bit Dr. Karim's words, different countries have very different paths. Some countries have gone from innovation to wealth as a process of organic growth, but when you come into wealth through natural resources, your path will necessarily be very different. And it's not always an easy one. It's very easy to squander resources as many countries have done. The UAE has been blessed with a just very incredibly admirable and widely respected leadership, which has allowed to translate that wealth into innovation and to the infrastructure necessary to go forwards in a positive way from there. But now, of course, the country is getting to the next steps where you go from wealth to innovation, but then you have to go from innovation to wealth. That is, you have to make that innovation count and generate the outputs that will lead the economy to grow in the future. So we are very excited to be part of that journey. We have several things going on in INSEAD Abu Dhabi which are meant to contribute towards that, both in terms of our international programs and embedding the UAE and Abu Dhabi in the international global economy, and also programs targeted more specifically to Abu Dhabi, and we have several things that will be disclosed over the next year related to that regarding promoting entrepreneurship and innovation among young Emiratis. I'll just finish with that. Thank you again all for coming, and have a good day. Thank you.